You've decided to stop being self-employed, maybe as a result of retirement or an illness, or maybe you've just taken the decision that you want to go back into full-time employment. What is the process? What are the steps that you need to make sure you take so that you are doing this correctly? Now, the first thing to understand is if you fail to do this properly, then what could happen is that HMRC might actually keep expecting that you need to file tax returns, okay? And if you don't file those tax returns and if you don't do this correctly, then what will happen is that you might eventually start to get fines and penalties written to you by HMRC. In order to make sure that you stop your self-employment in the UK correctly, the first thing you're going to want to do is to make sure that you actually inform HMRC. So you need to inform HMRC of your intention to stop being self-employed, okay? If you don't notify HMRC, there is simply no way for HMRC to be aware that you have stopped trading as a self-employed business owner. So this means the first thing you must do is to ensure that you notify HMRC as soon as possible once you've made a decision to now no longer become self-employed. This will ensure that HMRC are not able to keep sending you any letters regarding either fines or penalties because they are expecting that you need to keep filing future years' tax returns. Now, once you've done this, the next thing you will then want to do is if you have been VAT registered, okay, not every self-employed business owner will usually have this in place, but if you are the kind of business owner who had been VAT registered, then you also need to make sure that you cancel your VAT registration. So by canceling your VAT registration, you will ensure that HMRC doesn't keep expecting you to file VAT returns, okay? So it's just like the self-assessment tax returns. You need to make sure that you also inform HMRC that you are no longer going to be VAT registered because you've made the decision to stop being self-employed. Now that leads us to the third thing that you want to make sure that you do once you've made the decision to now stop being self-employed. The next thing you want to make sure you do is to actually cancel completely your PAYE scheme. The next thing you want to make sure you do is to actually file your final self-assessment tax return. Okay, it might seem strange, but once you have made the decision to stop being self-employed, you will have to file what is known as your last self-assessment tax return. So it's important you do this by the end of the tax year. And you also want to make sure that as a minimum, your self-assessment tax return covers what your trading income was, what your expenses were, if you had any capital allowance, and if indeed you had any capital gains that HMRC needs to be aware of. It's very important that you submit this at the very latest deadline of the 31st of January, which is usually applicable when you're submitting your self-assessment tax return via the online portal to HMRC. Next thing you want to make sure you do is to retain your business's financial records and any relevant tax documents for a period of the next 6 years as a minimum. This is to ensure that you are able to provide proof of any relevant transactions should HMRC decide that they were going to open an investigation into some of your business's transactions. This is going to be very important that you do, because the last thing you want is to completely stop being self-employed and throw away all those financial records, all the transactions, all the statements, and then in a couple of years' time, HMRC decides to actually investigate some things that were to do with your business and you don't have any evidence to support or justify your case. Now, once you're sure that you have all your business's records over the last 6 years, you also want to make sure that HMRC have a forwarding address for you, okay? You want to make sure that you have a relevant address that HMRC can write to you at, especially if you move address or if you change business address. This is because if they have any queries regarding your last tax return or indeed any prior year tax return, then HMRC can actually write to you and you will be notified regarding that. Now, there are other circumstances where an individual might decide to actually stop being self-employed, which is typically where maybe the business becomes insolvent. Okay, so this unfortunately does not mean that you will no longer be responsible for those debts. So if you are in the situation where you are looking to stop being self-employed as a result of insolvency, then you have to realize that when you are self-employed, whatever debt your business owes, whatever loans your business has taken out, then that is ultimately still your responsibility to pay. Okay, this is because as a self-employed person, there is no separation between you and the business. So you will still be responsible for paying off those debts, unless of course you are able to reach some sort of an agreement with the creditors. Okay, but it's just important to note that if this particular situation applies to you, then you need to be aware of what you need to do. So hopefully this video has been useful to you. If you've enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give this video a like. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and share this video with a fellow business owner who might benefit from it. I will see you in the next video.